four reasons, incidentally, the four tools of the debunkers. First is four rules for debunkering. What the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. The third is, if you can't attack the data, attack the people. It's easier. And the fourth, of course, is do your research by proclamation, not by investigation. And to illustrate this, Carl Sagan used to say, there are interesting UFO sightings that aren't reliable. There are reliable UFO sightings that aren't interesting, but there are no interesting and reliable ones, which sounds like a logical sort of thing, and said with great seriousness. The only trouble is, there's no references, no data, and it's totally false. The biggest study ever done on flying saucers, which is the one that finding a privately published version of really turned me around about it, Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14. I've been interested for a couple of years. I stumbled across it in the University of California, Berkeley Library. Information on 3,201 sightings. Categorization of every sighting, quality evaluation of every sighting, cross comparisons between the unknowns, which are the only interesting ones, and the knowns, 240 some charts, tables, graphs, and maps. I was in data heaven when I found this thing. But it also had the press release that went with it. Secretary of the Air Force. Now this report was never publicly distributed by the Air Force. The press release didn't mention the title of it, because if they'd said Blue Book Special Report 14, somebody said, what do you mean 14? What happened to 1 through 13? Oh, well, they were all classified. Nobody wanted to say that. They didn't say who did the work, so you couldn't go back to anybody in the press. Kind of remarkable. It was done by the Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio, a very well-respected research and development firm. Under contract to Project Blue Book, which was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, which isn't far from Columbus, as a matter of fact. And Battelle's connection with the program was still classified at that time. And I had dealings with them and the Foreign Technology Division, which is where Blue Book was myself later on. So I know something about that interaction. Anyway, in this biggest study ever done, several important things. One, it isn't mentioned in 13 anti-UFO books, even though all the authors were aware of it. What the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. Second, if you looked at the categorization, 21% of the sightings couldn't be explained, unknowns. But in the press release, which got very wide distribution, with a supposed summary that doesn't include any of the data from the report, despite all these tables, charts, and graphs, if you look at the press release, the Secretary of the Air Force said, quote, on the basis of this report, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. That seems very straightforward. The only trouble is, if you look at the darn report, 21% of the sightings couldn't be explained, not 3%.
Wow.
And furthermore, what they found was the better the quality of the report, more likely to be an unknown, which gets us back to Carl Sagan, and even more important, what they found was they had a separate category that they kept for insufficient information sighting. If there wasn't enough data available about a sighting, it could not, by definition, be listed as unknowns. So they lied on both important counts. And when I saw that press release and went, I'm a data man, lots and lots of data. I like trying to make sense out of it. That's what I did in industry, experiments, and so forth. It isn't enough to make a measurement. What does it mean? What can we draw from this? And so that was a shocker to me. I've been working on classified stuff. I understood secrecy. But how they could so blatantly lie, saying 3% when it was 21%, and saying there were just signs there wasn't enough data for, when in fact that was totally untrue.